part of the future. So I'm going to just let my colleague Joy introduce herself and also take the session from here.
Thank you, Ugonna. So let me just share my screen here and we will be able to just start off. Give me a second. I hope my internet behaves well enough for us to be able to. Are you guys able to see my screen right now? Able to see it? Awesome. Yeah, thanks Ugonna and thanks Tijane for giving us this opportunity to be able to speak to the many participants who on the session. I see we have 30 people on the session today. And as Ugonna and Tijane mentioned probably, the session for today is not necessarily just about ALU alone. We'd want to have a conversation around what exactly is happening, what is our role as an institution, what is our role, your role as partners and all. But maybe before I start, it would be nice for Tijane just let me know who's on the call, what kind of people do we have on the call so that we ensure that the information that we are going to share is valuable and equally just customized for specifically the guys who are on the call and there's total alignment. Just let us know what kind of people are on the call and what's the expectation that people have this afternoon, this time, depending on the time zone that the people are at.
Sure. So yeah, I mean, on the call, it's a lot of affluent partners. So a lot of people working in NGOs and civil society organizations and basically managing projects and working directly with young people, children and young people, teaching social financial education amongst, other things. It could be SR, HR. And really, we have kind of the gamut. I'm really happy with the attendance. Actually, we've got the gamut mostly, I would say, looking at the list quickly, coming from kind of Southern and Eastern Africa. We do have Ganiyu, I see him there, from Nigeria as well. So that's kind of the spread and the proficiencies, let's say, of the people on the call today.
Amazing. So this group of people, do they get to work with students directly, or help me understand how do they work with students so that we also see what kind of information would be very useful for them on this call?
Well, it's a mix. It's a mix. There's a lot of people who are working, project managing, but we do also have teachers here, the school directors here. So it is a mix. I would say a lot of them are more so kind of on the technical side with us working on project management, but we also have people who are active in the fields.
Awesome. Yeah. Then I think the session that we're going to have, I think everybody will be able to leave with information that will be quite valuable for them and equally just be able to see what is the work that you get to do every single day. How can we be able to really use that to advance the continent, to equally advance the world. So as we mentioned, we're going to look at emerging trends and the future of work, what exactly is happening there. And major goal that I have for us today is basically just to have a very clear understanding of the context of the game that we play. And when I mean the game that we play, it's all of us. For those of us who are in the education industry, for those of us who are in the NGO industry, like there's a context. All of us are contributors to a bigger game. So just understanding that particular context and how do we really do it better, and equally emphasize the importance of the role that all of us play, because as Tijane mentioned, it's quite a big different groups of people that are on this call today. And the third one is just to be able to guide you on a specific journey that will bring value to the people who are specifically handling students and those who are not handling students, just what can be your contribution to supporting the younger people across the continent. So who am I? My name is Joy Nyabuto. I'm currently the recruitment director at ALU. I am a very proud and passionate African, very, very proud to be African. And I am a higher education specialist. I'm also a certified purpose and transformation coach. And ALU, we speak a lot about missions, like what exactly are you really here to do? We speak a lot about that. And we also try to encourage the staff who come in, and it's something I'll encourage all of us, just be very clear. Why do you do what you do? And for me, why I do what I do is that I want to empower the young leaders specifically through education and entrepreneurship to enable them to make a meaningful impact in their world. within the continent and equally out of the continent. And when we look at the session that we are going to really have today, basically this is what the agenda looks like. We've done a bit of an introduction, we look at facts and trends, and we'll have a discussion around what we call 7G in ALU. These are the 7 global challenges and opportunities that we see across the continent of Africa. And also we'll speak very briefly. We have an hour, so we may not be able to cover a lot of things, but at least we will start the conversation in terms of youth and entrepreneurship for Africa's development. What's the role there? Yeah. Then where does ALU equally come in, and where do you come in? And we'll have a discussion of question and answer, a time for question and answers on that. So when we speak about Africa right now, it's a lot of things that are being said. It's the African century. It's a lot of conversations are currently happening about what's happening in Africa and how Africa is the next big thing. And I was sharing with a couple of colleagues of mine, and I was like, it's interesting that a lot of these conversations are equally coming from out of Africa. It's like there are those who are out there who are actually seeing the opportunity more than those of us who are in here. And I feel, I feel there's an opportunity that we guys have, regardless of the industry that you're in, whether you're in education, whether you're in the NGO world, regardless of the industry you're playing at, there is an opportunity for us to start really having these conversations and structuring these things in a manner that eventually we end up really harvesting the benefit that everybody's sort of looking at. But equally, there's a risk whereby if some specific people who have a kind of some type of influence are not able to rise up and start having conversations that are equally going to affect this change, then at the end of the day, we'll have a problem, right? And when we look at that, I want us to start by looking at some of the facts and trends of the things that are actually happening in the African continent. Give me a second, let me just adjust. I hope you guys can still hear me clearly. See on my side, the internet is breaking a bit. Ugona, are you guys still able to hear me clearly?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, awesome, thank you. So let's look at what's happening in the continent, and I'm going to specifically focus. As an institution, our major mandate is to train for the next generation of African leaders, and so I'm going to focus so much on the younger people in the continent. When we look at the continent of Africa right now, it's being referred as the world's youth hotspot. In terms of the median age in the continent of Africa right now, Africa has the youngest. So we could actually say right now, Africa is the youngest continent in the world. And as we keep growing, and everybody is seeing this, yeah? As we keep growing, it's already very, very clear. By 2035, Africa will have the largest workforce in the world, right? And a large number of those people will be under the age of 25. So I keep telling people when we have these conversations, I not only just think of myself and my relatives around me, but when you look at someone who you know, I will be in Africa, I'll have my family in Africa for a period of time. When you start thinking about these things, at times they could get you worried. And you start asking yourself really, who's doing what about this? And I'm happy we're on this call having this conversation. So when you look at a workforce that is the largest in the world with a population who are about 25 and below, it has its own, it could have an advantage, but it could also have a disadvantage. So let's start at that. The second thing is that 60% of the Africa's unemployed youth are at least also, like 60% of those who are employed in Africa, 60% of those are youths. Out of the 100%, 60% of them are youth. And out of that, 65% of these people have actually gone to school, graduated, and gotten back to their communities, but they still cannot be able to get jobs. And among many reasons that are always cited by employers, most of them would say, yeah, there's a skill mismatch, there's this and that. We understand probably that's part of the reasons, but still the opportunities that are there are just not enough. And as an institution, we try to check for those gaps and try to sort of cover for those. But the reality is that the unemployment rate is quite high, and most even for students who graduated school. And something needs to change there, because for someone who's managed to study until higher level or until university, they should be able to be in a position to sort of start creating jobs for those who probably were not able to get in there or start helping them to do things in a slightly different way, because you're looking at this particular person as someone who's more empowered compared to someone who's just in a village or in a rural area. The third fact is around still the population. And this is the fact that this population bulge for us could be a disaster, or it could actually be a dividend. And when you're looking at a dividend in terms of the economy, what you'd see is that anytime we have a population whereby the guys who are working are way, are way more than the guys who are dependent, the elders and the children, it's an advantage for any particular region. But for us, depending on how we handle it, it could work for us or could equally work against us. So, and that's why having such conversations that we are having with you guys right now becomes quite key. And still, as the rest of the world grows older, Africa is getting younger. So we know at some point, these other parts of the world probably will need more skilled workers, energetic workers to go work there. But the bigger question is, what kind of workers probably could Africa give? Because we have the opportunity to be able to do that. Will these people who are coming from very stable countries, well-equipped the right skills to actually be able to deliver value? Or will they be coming from countries that are very fragile, harboring a lot of frustration because of what's happening in those countries? That's also a fact that we need to really look at. And now when you're looking at the different people on this call, from NGOs, from people dealing with students, we have an opportunity to start having conversations around this and see what do the work that all of us do, how could this really bring a bit of change on that. So as we mentioned before, because of this bulge, right now we already have unemployment rates quite high, but this could skyrocket. Because looking at the numbers I was giving you, between 2015 and 2035, research has been shown, this is data from the UN, it indicates that we're expecting about 450 million new workers in the job market. So when you divide that per year, you're looking at around 22.5 million every single year. Do we really have capacity to be able to place these people? And if we do not have that, then we are looking at issues with insecurity and different other things. And the other last factor is around access to education. And I'll speak about that shortly when what we're trying to do within the ALU environment. You're having very many people in Africa, or younger people in Africa, trying to access education is quite difficult, more so the girls. So out of about 112 million girls in the world who are estimated to be out of school, 52 million of those are in Africa. So there are a lot of things we need to start doing and conversations we need to start having to be able to really change these particular trends we are seeing, because as we mentioned, two things could happen. It could either work in our favor or it could become a disaster, depending on what kind of conversations we'll start having and depending on what kind of key actions we'll start taking. So when you look at the continent and specifically as ALU, we've chosen to take a different path. We've chosen to take the path of, because everyone keeps saying education is the key to success, but most of us went to school. And if I ask on this call, you'll find that a lot of us, whatever you even studied in school, is not what you're actually practicing right now. You're in a totally different field, doing something very different that is not specifically relevant to maybe what you studied. So there's a lot of changes that is happening in education, and we need to ensure that we are training and educating students in a way that they can actually be very impactful once they go to the world out there, once they go to the marketplace. So in ALU, we are choosing the direction of specifically training young people, but in a way that they are able to really identify and see what are some of the challenges I see in Africa that I would want to be a part of solving, or what are some of the opportunities I see in Africa that I would also be a part of exploring and creating jobs or bringing solutions to that. So these are the challenges that we built our curriculum around, and we are also encouraging a lot of other people, whether it's NGOs, whether it's different other institutions, to come together and see how do we support more of these younger people to be able to get into these spaces whereby they can be able to learn, build something for themselves, and be able to be solution providers or solution givers within the continent of Africa. So when you look at the 7 grand challenges, for us, how we look at this is like a ticking time bomb. So it's either we fix it, and if we do not fix it, then as a continent, we are actually doomed. So as you're mentioning, we're looking at population rise and all these things. So when you look at a bulge in population and you start thinking about things like urbanization. You look at cities like Lagos right now, Nairobi, and you're like, with a more population, what exactly is going to happen? And we know there are companies, there are organizations, whether NGO or corporates, they're already looking into things around urbanization. So for us, we're like, how do we bring in students who are very passionate about urbanization to start having a conversation around that? We look at healthcare, and with 2020, 2021, with the pandemic, it's become even worse. There's a lot that needs to be actually done. So you can imagine what that would look like with a further population increase. Infrastructure is another bit that a lot needs to be done within the continent of Africa for us to be able to see the fruits of all these other opportunities that we have. Job creation, without even mentioning it, is also one of those. Climate change, governance, we can't speak enough about the leadership that we are seeing within the continent of Africa. There's a lot that really needs to change. And when you look at the whole terrain, the younger people have an advantage to be trained earlier, because historically it takes time for things to really change within the continent of Africa, and also when it comes to leadership. And that's why we feel we have an opportunity right now to really mold the people who would end up taking leadership. Education is another bit, and that's where we as an institution equally come in, because having conversations, we've realized far as much as different things are changing in various industries, education is one of those fields whereby not much has changed in so long. Yet the world is really moving and progressing at very interesting rates. So we are in that space whereby, as an institution, we are reimagining education and see how do we educate the African young leader better to be able to understand where they're at, to be able to really see how do they get to contribute, to moving the continent forward. Then when we look at the opportunities, these are things we look at as competitive advantages for Africa. If we wake up as a continent and really look at these things, we will literally be unstoppable. And we're looking at things like agriculture. And I know we are not able to really look at a lot of details, but happy to have these conversations with when we get the chance to speak to different partner organizations at different times. There's a lot to unpack with these 7 grand challenges and opportunities. So look at things like agriculture, regional integration, natural resources, art, culture and design, tourism, wildlife conservation and empowerment of women. There's a lot that can actually be done. And as we are doing what we are doing right now, just ensuring that we are bringing in the younger people equally, for them to be able to understand the context and being trained around these things to be able to take advantage of these opportunities, it would be a big thing. Arts and culture, these are some of the places whereby, if done well, even the challenges we're looking at in the continent around unemployment, around opportunities to place younger people, will not really be struggling with that. But better conversations need to be done from a policy level, better conversations need to be done from an integration level within the continent, better conversations need to be done around how do we really prepare the students to be able to be ready to take advantage of this particular opportunity. And everyone right now is speaking about entrepreneurship. And if you speak to many students or different younger people, and I know in part of what you guys do, there's also financial literacy. So there's a lot of discussions around this and just preparing younger people for them to be able to be clear on what they're doing, know how to handle finances, know how to start a business. It's very clear that youth entrepreneurship is one of those larger pillars that are very key for the development in Africa. And why we are looking at youth entrepreneurship as such is because mostly when you look at many businesses that have been started, you'll find that young entrepreneurs, there's a very high tendency, they end up hiring fellow young entrepreneurs. You'll realize they are also very responsive in terms of looking at opportunities and trends that are popping up. So when they see something that is actually new, they're very quick and quite confident to start. And also in terms of they are very active in like very high growth areas. And equally data has shown that when you look at new SMEs, that is small, medium enterprises that are coming up, more of them are actually creating more jobs compared to others that have been there for a while. So when you're looking at creating more employment, we need to start really thinking around how do we empower the young people? How do we really train them better what kind of partnerships do we really need to have to ensure that we are actually setting them up for a success and not really setting them up for failure. And at the very end, I would want us to also just have a conversation, depending who's on the call, to just see what are some of those opportunities that can equally be taken up. And in all this conversation, the question now comes is, where does ALU come in? I'll just give you a bit of our history. So as an institution, we've always been very clear. Our mission has been training the young leaders for the next generation in Africa. And as we do that, it's been a journey for us, because we understand and realize very well with the data and the trends and what we are seeing, if this is not something we take care of, if this is not something we are very active in doing in terms of really training the next generation of leaders, and not in a smaller numbers, at large scale, for us to have people out there who are very keen on solving problems and being change makers, then we will be having a disaster in a very short period of time. Probably in the next 10 to 14 years, it will be a big, big problem. And as an institution, we've chosen to do education differently. So we started with ALA in South Africa. I think most of you probably have an idea about ALA in South Africa. Then we have the African Leadership Network, which specifically is bringing together a network of people in the corporate, people in the NGO, to come together and have conversations that we're having right now around youth. How do we progress the continent? So we have African Leadership Network, which brings all these organizations together and lets them, or gives a platform for us to have this conversation, gives a platform for people to share resources, gives a platform for people to share where they are seeing the challenges are at, and equally gives a platform for those who've gone ahead to mentor the younger people who are getting into leadership, and to be able to hold their hands and to be able to show them what needs to be done. But as we kept doing that, we realized that there is a very big gap, because most of these people in African Leadership Network are equally employers. So they would say, yes, students are graduating from schools, they have the good grades and all that, but when it comes to really being effective, when it comes to really understanding what they're doing and why they're doing, and if they're very passionate about it, there's a very big gap. And that's what led us to starting African Leadership University, which we are very specifically, and we've mentioned this before, we do not train for people who want to get into very professional courses. Doctors and lawyers, we are very specific. We want to train for smart, we call them smart generalists, people who will get in and be able to be the people who gather all these other professions together to be able to solve problems. So between 2015 and 2018, we've had the African Leadership College that is in Mauritius. We've had the African Leadership University that is in Rwanda. We have the African Leadership School of Business. And now we have ALX, which is based in Nairobi, that specifically now trains those who've already graduated from university, but are not employable or do not really have the right skills to be able to make it in the job market. And what we train them at that particular point in time is what we train our students when they're in their first year of school. So that's just about a bit about us. And in terms of where we are based, our campus is based in Mauritius and Kigali, Rwanda. And our core philosophy is missions are not majors. So when I was speaking about the 7 grand challenges and the 7 grand opportunities, what we get our students to do is not really focus on the fact that I'm coming to ALU to study computer science. I'm coming to ALU to study business management. The bigger question is, of those 7 global challenges and the 7 opportunities, what exactly are you passionate about, or what exactly do you want to cause an impact in? And students could look at this generally and really be clear on, this is the impact, this is what I want to, this is how I want to impact my world, this is how I want to impact the continent, and allow them the chance to study when they have clarity of why exactly am I learning. Because I keep saying it and I keep speaking when I have the opportunity to speak to various people, specifically those who are supporting students. It's very important for us to at times step back and ask ourselves, what exactly is the work of a higher learning institution? And what we've realized, and we keep innovating from our end every single day, the work of a university is to get a student ready for impact, ready for their career journey, ready to be a global change maker, ready for change. Look at what is happening right now during COVID, and ready just to ensure that they're able to any challenges that they comes their way, they are able to fully be able to tackle that by learning how to learn. So that's why, as an institution, our full philosophy is around missions and not majors. We do not concentrate on just the degrees. We concentrate on what is your personal mission and what do you want to accomplish, and give the student an opportunity to learn as they are very clear on what their purpose is. So how we do that, I've mentioned about the majors, equally access. So access is also another big thing that we are looking at, because when you check across the continent, there are very many students who are sharp, very many students who are very passionate, very many students who are very skilled, but they cannot be able to access learning for various reasons. Some of them maybe because they are students with disabilities, some of them because they come from families that can equally not be able to afford the cost of higher education. So we try to make access quite available, and we are in the process of really relooking or reinventing our model to ensure we are opening up that access more. But beyond accessibility, where the barrier is just finances, we are equally making access to a network. So all of you will probably support or agree with me that beyond you being very skilled, the people that you're surrounded with are equally extremely important, because your network is your net worth. So as an institution also, we are very quite key on what kind of network are we helping these students build. And being an institution that is very diverse, we help them to start building that Pan-African global network at an early stage. We have a representation of almost over 35 countries, African countries within the institution. And we encourage these people to form, network and form that global network that once they go out there to solve problems, it will be very useful to them, because social capital is really key, and we try to support students with that. The second thing is our learning model. The third thing is our learning model. As we try to make education accessible, we are also asking ourselves, what kind of education are we making accessible? Is it the normal education whereby a student will come in, cram facts, produce it on paper, get your A, go to the real world, and you cannot be able to even contribute, or you cannot be able to really check for a problem or an opportunity and take advantage of it? It personally makes me extremely sad. I know this happens in very many other countries. When I am Kenyan, I'm based in Nairobi. When every time you're seeing on the news, I went to school, I studied architecture, or I'm an engineer, I got a first class, but right now I do not have a job, I'm sleeping on the street, or I'm big. You ask yourself a question, which is, what exactly did this person really learn? And why are they in that state with someone who has that level of knowledge? And what is normally very clear is that there's something that is missing. There's something that we did not teach, or there's somewhere we went wrong in terms of how we were teaching. Because the memory-based learning is not really doing us a lot of good, as we can be able to see. Data is actually showing it. It's not really doing us a lot of good. So as an institution, we are moving from a memory-based learning model to what we call a learning by doing model, learning by experience model. That's why in terms of how our students learn, it's very much self-directed by the student, and equally a larger part of it is this student being on the field and having that hands-on experience while they are still in school. So that if you're studying something around agriculture, go to the field and really see what's happening within the continent around agriculture. Learn by doing those things, so that even once you graduate, you've built that social capital. You have the experience of what's happening in the continent, and that knowledge that you have ends up being very effective for you as a person and impactful, for your environment. And also, because you're giving value, ends up giving you that level of, I would say, income and sustainability out of it. So those are some of those key things that we've been looking at. And how we do that, we concentrate on what we call the 7 meta skills. I don't want to go into details of this. Probably we'll do that later once we engage with the different partners who are interested in knowing how we teach specifically. It's aspects, but I know for those who are engaging with students or leading different projects with the students, these are also key things that probably you guys could also be able to start having conversations around with your students. Leading self-awareness is really, really key. And when you have conversations with most of these young people, you realize there is more that really needs to be done when it comes to self-awareness. Because you cannot be able to lead someone else when you're not even able to lead yourself. So having these conversations at a very foundational level become quite key in terms of who they end up becoming and what they end up making of themselves. Leading others, aspects around empathy, diversity, how do you build relationships? Because a lot of times we try to, or rather I'd say the culture within the African context has been, how good are you in what you do, which is not a bad thing. So you find people push themselves so much. If the younger people, they do so well in school, performance currency has been something that most of us have concentrated upon, and looking at probably our parents and those who've gone ahead of us, it's like, just become very good at what you do and things will just flow. Reality is that things have shifted. It's very good for you to have performance currency, be very good at what you do, but that will only take you up to a particular level. Relationship currency is becoming really, really key. And part of the research we were doing within our career development department, we realized that some of the students who had very good networks, those were the people who were really getting placements and job real quick than those who are, for lack of a better word, I'd just call them loners. Yes, they are good performers, they're very good at what they do, but they just keep to themselves. So that art of building relationships becomes really key, and specifically if you're looking at getting these younger people to start businesses, getting these younger people to get into the entrepreneurship world, it becomes very important. Feedback. How do you give feedback? How do you collaborate with other people? These are things that traditionally are not really taught in school, yet if you ask me, this is what is needed in the marketplace for things to be able to move, and students, or rather younger people, need to understand that. Entrepreneurial thinking, just the art of really identifying opportunities, human-centered thinking, creativity, and innovation. Those are equally quite key for the younger people to know. Critical thinking, quantitative reasoning, just looking at data and understanding what exactly is this data meaning. Communication for impact. How do you communicate? Because someone can be extremely talented, extremely brilliant, but if they cannot be able to communicate what's in their mind to other people, then it becomes a problem. The knowledge they have, the brilliance they have, then does not really help them, neither does it help the other people. So getting these younger people to know how to communicate equally becomes quite key. Then managing complex tasks, that's also quite key. Just structuring, planning, coordination of staff is equally very key. And I think we'll share some of this information specifically with those who are student-facing or dealing with students directly, because I feel these are conversations that we need to keep having, and we can't stop having, we can't have them enough times. Whoever has the ability to, or rather the opportunity to speak to any younger person, whoever has the ability to create or create a curriculum or design a curriculum that is training or doing anything for the younger people, these are things that need to be there, even though it's not necessarily in a university setup. These are conversations we really need to have. And speaking of the ALU advantage, still ties into a lot of the things I've mentioned before. It's around what skills are we training? How are we teaching? Values and character, that's one thing we emphasize enough. It can be one thing for you to be really amazing, but if your values and characters are wanting, it becomes a problem. You cannot really excel or really go far. So just ensuring that the students are equally very clear on what is their value, what are the value systems that they need to uphold is clear. Career development and work experience, we are building on this very heavily this year moving forward. So we've been supporting our students from the time they graduate moving forward, but with the numbers we are looking at in the world, with the numbers we're looking at in the continent, we see there's a problem. And with the network that we've built as an organization so far, we feel we can do more. And that's why in collaboration with our sister organization, that is ALX, that I had mentioned before, we have started something called The Room. And this place, it will be specifically charged with really training the younger people to be well-skilled, know how to position themselves, but also help them to place them in the various spaces in the market. And I believe with you guys and the partners, we'll be able to reach out to you guys and even see if you have students in your pool that could benefit from this, but we'll have these conversations further because, as you mentioned, it's a larger challenge that we have as a continent, and we need to have discussions around how do we really solve for this, more so when it comes to matters unemployment. Then when you look at a network, I mentioned ALN, I mentioned the diversity. We also try to build quite a large network for students to be able to take advantage of. And the stamp of approval is just around coming from an institution that is known very specifically to train for leaders, to train for problem solvers. We've had our students getting jobs or being employed in some of the best companies in the world, but beyond where they work, it's what kind of people are they? What kind of value do they bring, right? And when you look at where you come in as a person, and this is where I would want us to now probably, I'll open it up for us to have a conversation very shortly. It's depending on what area you're in. If you're someone who's dealing with the students, for instance, you have the opportunity to guide them in terms of, this is the course probably you'd want to take. Are you well versed enough in terms of really understanding why? Or rather, how much information do you think as an individual you have to be able to guide this person better? Is this current information? Is this information that probably you've just used over time? So where we come in, if you're student facing, this is the part whereby there's a lot of research that needs to be done in terms of why does this student want to go to this university? Why does this student want to take the major they want to take? Why do they want to, go out of Africa? Or why do they want to study within Africa? And we are very much willing to partner with you and be able to really help you guys understand the various aspects we've researched and be able to share the knowledge. If you're in that space, let's say an NGO, for instance, you're working on particular projects, whether it's community projects, and students can equally be engaged in, how are you able to plug in? Could it be sharing projects with some of the institutions that you're working with, whether higher institutions, whether ALU? For us specifically, we work with organizations and companies for them to give opportunities for students to work there, and for them to also just give us projects of things that they're observing in the market that equally could be able to be beneficial to the students and be beneficial to the organizations. And also around things around accessibility. So as an institution, I mentioned, we have different ways that we are supporting. And when it comes to access specifically, we have scholarships that we offer students. And these are scholarships they range from female scholarships, students with disabilities, and just generally students who come from disadvantaged families. But we pick a very specific type or caliber of student. So if you're someone who's also dealing with students and student facing, are you able to really identify and see what skills, or rather what, I don't know how to place it, beyond the eligibility requirements, what talent does this student have and where exactly do they really fit in? And we are also happy to have further conversations around that. So there's more that we could speak about how ALU could be able to partner, but I just want to open up for comments and any questions coming up from the point of, again, as Tijani mentioned when we started, it's a very large group in the sense of the types of things that we are all doing. There are those who are student facing. There are those who are running different kinds of projects. I don't know if it's community-based, depending on what you're currently doing. There are various ways we can be able to collaborate and work together. Because the other thing we also try to do with the various partners across the continent is to be able to see what kind of knowledge sharing can we also do. Because as an institution, we are quite big on doing research, and we are well connected in terms of various other employer partners that we have in the various industries, whether it's the nonprofit world, whether it's the corporate world. So what knowledge and what things are we seeing, and how do we put that together to be able to benefit the organizations individually and equally be able to benefit the students. So just to summarize, for anyone who's dealing directly with the students, and you look at students that you have with you and they would want to go to an institution of higher learning, just being very clear on helping these students understand why am I selecting this particular university is really key. why am I going to study the major I'm going to study is really key. And what opportunities are out there for me to be able to take advantage of is equally quite key. And for us as a school, we've cut it out very clearly. For students who are very clear on all these things and feel like ALU is the institution that would want to come in and they cannot be able to afford higher education, we have those opportunities in partnership with MasterCard for them to be able to take advantage of the scholarship. And Ugonos on this call probably would be reaching out, or you could also reach out to have conversations of how your students can be able to take advantage of this. And then for those who are in projects, doing various projects across the continent, we have an opportunity to partner in the sense of we can have you guys bringing projects to us. How we normally look at this is if an organization has things that needs to be done and probably you do not have capacity, but you also feel like it could be research, it could be something that could be done by a student, offer these younger people opportunities for them to come in and try to do these projects for you, whether they do it as projects in class, that's also an opportunity to partner. Or if it's a particular global challenge or opportunity that we are dealing with, can also have conversations around that and see how do we collaborate better. I'll give an example. We have something we call Business of Conservation. And Business of Conservation is a conference that was built as a result of our global challenge around wildlife and conservation. And it has people from different non-profit organizations that came in, and there's a lot of work that has been done through that, to the extent now we have a whole arm that supports students who specifically are in the business of conservation. We've had a lot of our internal team consulting with some of these non-profit organizations, and from the report we were looking at last week, this collaboration has been quite useful. So if you're running a project around either of the 7 challenges or opportunities, we are happy also to have conversations and we see how do we as an institution collaborate with you guys and be able to sort of advance the continent, but equally create more opportunities for these young leaders or these young people that we are training ahead of the badge that we are looking at, so that we don't find ourselves on the disaster part or other disaster extreme, but we find ourselves whereby as a continent we are harvesting the dividends of the actions that we've taken right now. So I'd love to pause it there and open up for any comments or questions. I don't know how you'd love for us to do this, Tijani. Do you want it on the chat, or do you want guys to just unmute and speak?
Yeah, no, thanks for that, Joy. I think, just to facilitate this, I see that there's hands up. So yeah, that's a great way. If you just want to put your hand up, and then I'll just call on someone and then they can unmute themselves. And if not, please feel free to type your questions in the chat. Thanks for the presentation. It was actually quite interesting to see how a lot of the meta skills actually tie into the Aflatoon core pillars. So I'm really happy to hear about that, and I'm sure other partners will comment on it. I see Infamara's hand is up. So Infamara, if you want to go ahead, you can unmute yourself, and the floor is yours. Famara, are you with us? I see that your hand is up.
Sorry, Tijani. I was muted.
Okay.
No problem. Sorry about that. Thank you very much. Yes, I am Famara Dabo. I am the Programs and Sponsorship Director for Child Fund International in the Gambia. And I'm sure our colleagues may be familiar with Child Fund, which is an international child protection and development agency, and with headquarters in the US. So I decided to come first because I should be in a meeting in the next 5 minutes. As you can hear, messages been popping up. So I just want to throw in my quick reactions to the presentation and some of the points that I want to put across. But first of all, I must confess that I have attended different meetings or different interactions. However, this one is very touching. I think as a continent, yes, we all know some of the issues we are challenged with as a continent, but having this type of discussion, having this type of institutions coming up with initiatives where we are opening up for young people to explore For me, that is a big opportunity for our young people. So thank you, Joy. Thank you for that brilliant presentation. I just want to say a few things around what we're doing as Child Fund in regards to youth development. We have a program model that we call Voice. This voice is more or less trying to give young people the voice. It ranges from different angles. You give them the right skills, give them the right opportunities, create opportunities for them where they can participate. They can talk about issues that affect them. They can be part of the development processes in their communities. Because, you know, Africa has a lot of traditions that are barring young people or children from participating in decision making, in talking about things that affect them. So we want to see how we can break down those barriers and allow young people to bring out their skills and talk about issues that affect them. Participate in the global discussions around youth participation, youth development. And that's why I'm very much interested in the global network that you guys have. How do we, because we set up young people in what we call youth agencies. We have youth agencies, and these youth agencies they are young people who come together to discuss about issues that affect them, ranging from education, from health, from all other aspects of life. So I will be very much interested to see how do we align what we are thinking in this program model with what you are having at ALU, and that is something that definitely I want to come back to. I think one general thing we are challenged with as a continent, for me, specifically about Gambia, I think young people are not lazy. It is just about giving them the opportunity. I'll give you this story. I went to my village about 3 years ago, and I called young people in the village. I told them, look, in this community, we have a lot of challenges that we are faced with. But what can we do as young people to be able to address some of these things? We've all been to school. Some of us are graduates, others are still going to school, they're going to universities. But we know we all have ideas. How can we put those ideas together? But as small as it was, we thought about a whole community of more than 2,000 people. They don't have a single bakery. It might look small, but they used to move about 7 kilometers to get to the nearest bakery to get bread. And this young guy within the group said, look, I found that to be very, very confusing. We here can do something. And I said, you are talking about something that we never thought about. So within 3 years, we start brainstorming. And today I can tell you comfortably, that community, just to cut the story short, that community is having a modern bakery that is providing bread for the people in that community. And in fact, he don't just stop there, but other young people in the community are now coming to join him. And now we are even seeing others coming up with other initiatives. Like some even have a poultry. We have a young girl who established a juice factory, like producing juice using local mangoes, other fruits at the community. I said, look, it's just about giving them the opportunity. And for me, this is what I see from your presentation, is more or less making them have access to those opportunities. So for me, because I have to go for a meeting, I will be happy, Tijan, thank you for facilitating this. I'll be happy to have further discussions so we can see how do we move from here to the next level in terms of our youth engagement and development. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dabo. And it's normally music to my ears when I hear all these other organizations that are working with younger people, because everybody's trying to do something. But can we just imagine how it will look like when all of us collaborate and feed off each other's energy and each other's advantage? So definitely we are very happy to have a conversation moving forward, because there's a lot that can actually be able to accomplish. What's clear is that all of us have the same focus, all of us have the same goal. So definitely happy and looking forward to having that conversation around how can we be able to really engage, and even in the youth agencies, even with the voice program that you're speaking about, how can we be able to engage more? And I know this was a very short time, we would not have been able to really showcase a lot, but in these other conversations we would. I'll give an example of one of our graduates during the pandemic. He's from Uganda. He was running a totally different business, but I realized, okay, the pandemic has hit, we are here, and we all need to be supporting each other somehow. Using the small amount of money he had, he started manufacturing or creating masks for just the local bicycle guys, motorbike riders in his area. By the time the pandemic was ending, they had joined up and used the access and the connections he had gotten from ALU and the networks, and he had managed to raise funds that he was actually providing and manufacturing masks for a whole community. Right now, that ended up becoming a company. He's employed different people. He's been selected for a program in Israel. And look, there are more stories about such younger people who are creating impact. And as you mentioned, these young people are not lazy. What they need is access. What they need is proper direction to be able to know what needs to be done. And as an institution, we are challenging ourselves in the sense that for those who have the privilege of getting to a level of university, the knowledge you have should be able to go back and impact quite a number of people. So even with our alumni associations and different other platforms and networks that we have, very happy for us to connect and see how do we collaborate better and ensure that we are not only just giving these younger people an opportunity and a voice, but they are equally seeing that they can be of impact and they are truly changing and causing impact within their communities, their continent, and their world. Thank you so much, Dabo. I'm really looking forward to that connection. Tijani, I don't know if you want me to answer what's on the chat first, or?
Yeah, I see a lot of questions popping up in the chat. I saw Actmore had a question, and I'll go through the questions in the chat, and we'll get through to all of them. But yeah, Actmore, please go ahead. If you can hear us, Actmore, I think you might be on mute. Okay, no problem. If not, I did see Patricia's hand went up next. So please, Patricia, if you have a question, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much for another opportunity for sharing what you do, and I hope for the next generation who might be taking us or taking over from us soon. I have two questions. Do you have an age limit for your new entrants? And then secondly, there are some of the youth that we are working with or we've already worked with, and they have graduated, but still finding their bearing. Is it also an opportunity for them to join the group, if it is possible, to really understand what they stand for, what they want to do, and what their future should be going through your program? And is there a second degree also for your program for those category of people, or they have to just go through the process with all of them, be able to make it the next level? Thank you.
Thank you so much, Patricia. So let me start with the question on age limit. So initially when we started, we used to have an age limit because, again, the classroom setup is quite interesting, and just the modalities around it are quite interesting. So when we started initially, we used to have an age limit of 23. But as we progressed and we started seeing the number of people who are applying and that they are above 23, and when we started assessing the situations, we realized some of these people, it was not by their doing. It was probably because of the environment they were coming from and the various challenges they were facing. We decided to change that. So right now, we admit all students, but if a student is way above, or if we, like above at least 35, we normally have conversations to just have an understanding of what exactly happened. for you to be here. But now it's normally, we've introduced what we call contextual admission. And what this does, it will not discriminate against any student, if I could put it that way, regardless of the factors. We'll try to really understand what's happening and see how we can equally be able to support. So right now, any student can apply. If the age limit is way higher, we'll do the contextualized version, understand their situation, and see how we can be able to support better. Because even for mental health purposes, putting someone who's 40 or putting someone who's 35 with a 16-year-old in one setup, the learning style and the way they learn is quite different. And we also have a lot of peer work, them learning together within the institution. So we try to look at all that. But in terms of the admissions process, we will allow all students to be able to apply. And if they get in, well and good, we'll take the rest once we move on. For as long as the student has been admitted, we'll do the contextualized version after to really understand what happened and how we can support better. Then you mentioned around some of the youth that you're working with who've already graduated school, but are still trying to find their bearing in life. So as I mentioned, we look at leadership holistically. So when you see from ALA in South Africa to our ALX program in Nairobi, we are looking at all stages of learning. So ALA is a pre-university, you could look at it as a high school. Then you have ALU, ALC, which is a university. Then you have ALX, which is looking at students who've already graduated school and are trying to get into the job market. So we have currently partnered with MasterCard Foundation, and we are trying to train and place a lot of these students. So please connect with us after this, connect with Ugona, and we'll be able to reach out to you and see what number of young people do you have, and what eventually we'll do is connect you to our ALX program, the room that I was mentioning, and some of these students will be supported greatly from that side. They'll be able to get the training to just be able to find bearing and understand what direction they should be able to take. They'll be able, once they've been trained, they'll equally be able to be supported around placements across the various industries. For now, we are just partnering with the people who are within the ALN, the African Leadership Network, to be able to offer placements, but we are building this network more. The short answer is that just reach out after this and we'll be able to probably give you a nomination form, but above all, we'll connect you with our colleagues from the room, and you guys will take the conversation from there for the students who've already graduated school. Around the second degrees, one thing we believe is that honestly, sitting down in a classroom and writing an exam, that's not the only thing that makes people successful. So if a student already has a first degree, unless there's a very specific reason why the student wants to take a second degree, what we encourage them more to do is go to ALX, because what ALX now does is just solidifies the 7 meta skills for them and ensures they are more employable. And if they really want to take a second degree, we need to be very clear why. Why are you really doing it? Because I think there's been a culture in the continent for a while whereby people think the more degrees you have, the more better placed you are. Not really. We're having people with masters struggling to get jobs. We're having people with PhDs who've never had a job. So, or rather not even necessarily doing quite impactful things for their lives and equally for the community or the world around them. So the why for us is normally very important. So if a student wants to take a second degree, once there's clarity of why exactly are you doing it, well and good. But for us, specifically for scholarships, we will not admit a student who's taken a first degree. If it's a student who's coming to pay for themselves and they are clear on why they're doing that, that's a different conversation altogether. But if it's a student who's already had the first degree, they've graduated, we'll find different ways of guiding them to other pathways that are available, and ALX and the room are very much well placed to be able to support such kinds of students. So maybe Patricia, a connection after this, I believe we're going to just noting this down, and then we can reach out to Jane and ensure we follow up on this on these asks so that we can be able to do the proper introductions that are needed or be able to support, because definitely there are ways we could be able to support these students.
Great, yeah, thanks. And yeah, of course, we'll be connecting everyone, and also it'd be great if we could share all the slides. I think everybody would like to see those. There's a lot of questions. I'm going to try to get through. We have about 20 minutes. I'm going to try to get through as many of them as possible. I see that there is a written question. And the question is, yeah, first and foremost, thanks for the great presentation. And they're asking if you had an internship program, and based on your experiences, how do you work with private companies to have an effective internship program?
Right. So within our learning model has been built in a way that students study for 8 months in class, and then 4 months every year they have to do an internship. That's part of the curriculum. It's a must. So all our students have to do a 4-month internship every single year. So how we do this is we do it in 2 ways. We have, number one, we try to simulate the real world to the student. So we will train you on how to write your CV, we'll train you on how to attend an interview, we'll train you on how to present yourself, communication and all those things, we will do that. Then we'll give you an opportunity as a student to imagine that you've graduated school and you're job hunting. How are you going to do that? So the students will be trained on how to write their CVs, then they will start applying by themselves in the various industries and the various places they would want to work in or be attached in. And then some of the students, because we have a very big population of students, so some of them end up getting internships that way by themselves. Then the second angle, we do it through partnerships. So we have employer partners that we reach out to. So with the 7 grand challenges and opportunities that you saw there, we try to reach out to various employer partners who now end up partnering with us and normally taking students from us every single year. I think partnership is the way to go with these things. Just having clarity of purpose and that common shared purpose between the various organizations and going the partnership route is the way to go, because when you look at these younger people and when you check the culture, in all honesty, a lot of the things that are happening within the continent, even for internships, it depends who do you know, where are you connected, that's where you end up getting internships. But for even jobs, so for students who are not well connected, it becomes an issue. So we go the partnership way. So our career development department, as the opportunity has been given the job to reach out to as many partners, employer partners, that's the corporate world, the nonprofit world. We try to get as many partners as we can to come on board. But then the other thing we also do, we do open days at school. So in the various regions, what we do is that bring in partners, employers, to come in and interact with our students. And again, as I was speaking earlier, I mentioned something around projects. We allow companies to also do short projects with our students for them to be able to see what the students can actually be able to do. And that normally becomes a very good way of now partners coming in, because they're normally very surprised when they find actually there's a student who can do something way better than someone that they've actually employed on a full-time basis. So just exposure. If you ask this question from a perspective of maybe something you want to do within your organization, just finding ways of exposing the students and then partnerships becomes the best way to really go. That's how we handle it at ALU. And so far it's worked very well. The other bit is community. So figuring out what is that community you have. We are very big on building community because a lot of things come from the community. So for instance, at ALU, we have parents. So some of the asks we normally make is, which parent can be able to get an ALU student an internship? This is what the student has done. So once the community is very clear on what you're doing and very clear on the objectives, they equally contribute. So between the community, the simulations we do with the students, and then the career development department that we have, then the African Leadership Network that we have, these particular places, that's what we now try to use to place our students for internships.
Great, thank you. That's really helpful. That's really helpful, and I hope whoever asked the question is also clear on that. Emmanuel, I saw that you had your hand up. You also typed the question. Do you want to go ahead and say it?
Yes, thank you very much, and I appreciate this a great opportunity. What Joy has been shared. I'm Emmanuel. I'm Executive Director of Hope of Family based in Rwanda. We are promoting parental involvement in children education while improving family social economic status. my question is about the most of youth are face the biggest challenge about financial limitation problem. So I would like to hear the point of Joy. How do you deal with that that problem so that the youth can start the new business? Thank you.
Right. So definitely, as you mentioned, finance for most students who want to get into the business area is a big problem. But how I think about it before we even start speaking finance is preparation, right? I know there are very many initiatives that are being done by different places, from government to the NGO space, to individuals who end up sponsoring and supporting and investing in the young people's business. And when you look at data, unfortunately, most of the times these investments don't end up really doing something good. Yeah. And how we are looking at it as an institution is, are we able to prepare them to the extent that if they sit in a room with an investor, the investor is like, now that I want to put my money there. So before we even start speaking finances, could we have a conversation around how are we preparing them? Because as much as our youth are extremely energetic and very ambitious and very passionate, again, in our generation right now, there's also that people are not patient, right? You want to get it and you want to get it now. So you find that particular aspect of it, if we do not really change and shift the mindset, even if people invest with these younger people, it becomes a problem. So I think historically and with data, that has made a lot of people who probably could invest withhold. Because they're like, even if you give these younger people money, they will waste it. So we are looking at it the other way around. That's why within our program, we've set something we call SVP. It's called Student Venture Programs. And what this does, it trains students from understanding from ideation stage, I have an idea. What does that look like until you've done a proof of concept? And then you can be able to say, I've done this for the 6 months. This is what my business model is. This is the plan. And if I'm given this money, this is what could happen or could be done. So I think we agree that there is a problem in terms of youth financing, but I think we need to build confidence within, let me call them the financing community. Whether it's venture capitals, whether it's angel investors, we need to get to that place of building their confidence whereby if, for instance, Hope Family Rwanda gets to them and says, I have 10 young people that I have trained and prepared, but they need this amount of capital in their business for them to be able to scale, they will listen because they know in the past you guys produce people who've been well trained around entrepreneurship. There's a lot of demystifying that we need to do for our young people on what entrepreneurship is. Because people just think when you come and just start a business, you're an entrepreneur. Not really. You're sort of self-employed and you're doing something that is giving you income, but we need to help them really understand what's entrepreneurship and what does that entail. Once we do that and we start building confidence and showcasing more of these young people, the financing community will start joining in. But I agree there's a challenge there, but I feel from our end, how we are looking at it is, can we prepare more younger people who are actually ready for financing so that we build confidence in that other community in terms of people who would want to invest. So that's how we are looking at it. Yes, I agree there's a challenge, but I feel there's a gap. Once we fill that gap, probably we'll solve this other problem better.
Yes. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yes.
All right, great. Yeah, we've got about 10 minutes left. There's another question from Karen. So yeah, please go ahead and unmute yourself.
Yeah, thanks so much, Tijen. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes, yeah.
Can you hear me, please?
Yes, we can.
Yeah. I'm Karen from Gauzen, right? Organization. And my first question is, what is the level of entry? Because like here in Uganda, we have levels of education, I would say primary level, O level, and then A level, and then university as well. So like you said, you don't really give, there is not really a chance for those who want to take up other degrees for the first degree. But then I would like to ask, do you have entries for like O-level, A-level, and then there are those who stopped on the way, like senior three? I'm speaking in terms of here in Uganda, like senior three, but they would also love to have that chance to continue. So I would love to have that reply.
Right.
And then sorry?
Just proceed, Karen, sorry.
Yeah, okay. Another thing I would like to ask is there any program for these other, let me say, those who are not willing to go back to school, or they're not just willing, but they don't have the sponsorship to go back to school, but there are girls who are out there in the community. We have helped them to give them some skills. I would say bakery skills like in soap making, art and craft. But the fact is that they lack the market where to sell those products. But they would love to be boosted up so that they would also have to continue with their businesses which they have started. So is there any opportunity where you can help them out?
Okay, so let me start with the question that you asked about levels of entry. So specifically for the university, we admit students who've at least done an A-level. That is, when we look at Uganda's system, the student needs to have done their A-level and they will be admitted. So we do not admit students who have taken the O-level, because again, for as much would want to make this very accessible, we are still under regulators, and we'd also want to do the stuff in a proper way. So we only admit students who have taken the A-level exam. That's specifically for Uganda. So if you have a student who dropped out and maybe they dropped out in senior three, that one we probably may not be able to admit such a student because they've not finished education within their country system, and based on the regulation rules, we may not be able to admit them. So if the student is finished at A-level and probably did not have the money to continue, those are the candidates we are looking for. We'd want to ensure that education is accessible to all students, regardless of the background that they come from. They need to be able to apply. For the girls, majority of our scholarships, specifically for this year, we are going to be awarding it to the girls. So again, just a call out here for, if you know organizations that are working with young girls who completed high school and cannot be able to access higher education, please let them reach out to us. We are looking for girls across the continent. That 52 million number, would want to reduce that. And in partnership with MasterCard, that's a big one that we are doing there. So for any of these girls who had completed high school, A-level specifically, happy for them to be able to apply and join in. But for the girls that maybe dropped off before high school, for those who can be able to go back to school, and if they would really love to go to an institution of higher learning, well and good. But if not, we currently do not have a specific program that is catering for this particular group of people, because our belief is that the students we are empowering and who are graduating from our institution should be able to go back and support such kinds of students. So maybe, Karen, what I can do, we have a number of students in ALU whose missions was around women empowerment, and some of them have ended up creating a number of organizations that they are running for themselves, some of our alumni students, maybe a connection there, and maybe we'll check within the network if there are people who would be interested in supporting such kinds of students. But for ALU as an institution, we do not have a specific program that we are doing for students who dropped out of high school and have probably learned a skill or two. We do not have a specific program, but we can just be able to see from a relationship perspective who within our network could be beneficial to the girls that you're supporting in Uganda.
Great.
I hope that answered your question, Karen.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. All right, thank you. There's a question from Axmore. I don't know if you're here now, if you can hear us or you can unmute, but yeah, Axmore, you had a question earlier if you'd like to ask it now.
Okay, thank you, Tijani. Thank you, Ugona and colleague. My question is on the Nairobi campus. What programs are you offering at the Nairobi campus? I don't know if this question has been asked because I dashed into another meeting. And of course, looking at the caliber of our young people that we have, maybe in Zimbabwe, because I'm from Zimbabwe, what are those things that we quickly able to pick, then say they are the best and they can be able to win these scholarships? Thank you.
Right. So you mentioned, you asked a question about the program in Nairobi. So the program that is in Nairobi is, I would say it's for students who graduated university, let me put it that way. And specifically what this program is doing is just giving them the 7 meta skills that most of them did not get in the traditional institution, and then trying to place them for jobs. So that's all the program does. It's not necessarily an accredited university program, really. No, it's an accelerator course. So they go through that accelerator course, and then we try to place them in the various industries. So that's how that works. So mostly it's students who've graduated and they're in that job seeking window, and they come, they are trained to be more employable, if I would put it that way. And then we try to place them or try to give them the skills for them to be able to get placement in some of the different places. So you asked around eligibility requirements, I believe, around what does a student need to have for them to be able to get a scholarship at ALU. Number one, I think above all, it's a need-based scholarship. It's a merit-based, need-based scholarship. So number one, there needs to be proof that this student actually comes from a very disadvantaged family and they cannot be able to afford. Then number two, we have eligibility requirements that in terms of grades, and equally just leadership potential, could be some things they've done within the community. So what we are currently doing right now, we are evaluating our application process, because initially getting in was very tough for most students because our application was quite hard. But right now we are in the process of evaluating and revising our application. So what I'll probably do is that after this call, once I think in a week or so, we should be able to be ready. We'll be able to share out an email with an attached probably document that will be able to indicate and show you guys a student who's coming to ALU needs to have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or this is what we are checking for the students to be able to get a scholarship. I think so Ugona will be able to share that, I think, with all of you, and then we can then take up conversations with individual partners who specifically have students who want to come. And maybe I'll also join that particular question with the question I've seen here around, do we have online programs and what kind of students do we really admit? So before COVID, we've always had a blended learning model at ALU, because again, we try to be very forward thinking. So even before COVID, we had our learning on both platforms, in person and equally online. So when COVID hit, for us, our students continued studying as if nothing happened. But as we are rethinking and trying to innovate, so we are trying to see how do we really even make it more better. But yes, currently all our students are studying online. But having an online program specifically, we do not have it in that way. It's all our admitted students right now are studying online because of COVID. And before COVID, it was also a mix of in-person and online learning. So I also saw someone asking around the programs that we are offering. As I had mentioned before, we've made that decision for ourselves as an institution. We do not just want to train for specific people, if I would put it that way, like an engineer. We want to train for people who will think or become mass problem solvers, so smart generalists. So even in terms of our offerings, we are at that stage right now. We are rethinking a lot of things, because we're like, if you're to solve this youth issue problem and unemployment problem, there are things that need to be done different. So equally in the next maybe like 2 weeks or 1 week, we'll be able to come back to you guys and give you a breakdown, because things are shifting a bit within the institution. There are things we are revising, there are things we are making better, there are things we are introducing, there are things we are doing to make it more accessible. So even for the courses, we'll be able to share that with you. But what is very clear right now is that this is very much aligned to the global challenges and global opportunities that we have. but we'll be able to share that information in a week or two. Yeah. I'm seeing a lot of questions, Janet. I don't know, I see we're out of time. I don't know if you could answer. I'll answer those maybe individually if you help us know which organization these people are coming from. Unless if you guys have like an extra 5, I don't know. I'll defer to you on that.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. I mean, what I can do, there's one last question that I saw coming in from Ganiu, and I saw he had his hand up earlier. So I'll ask that question. But yeah, like you mentioned, I think what we can also do is we can gather these questions and then answer them via email or via connection and go from there. But yeah, I'll just take this last question from Ganiu, who's joining us from Links Nigeria, who actually partnered with ALU last year on some scholarships for youth. He says some of the youth submitted their application and are waiting for the results. On a business aspect, is there anything like an endowment fund for your students to start a small business?
Right. So I don't know if you could clarify when they're in school or when they're out of school.
I'm guessing this is out of school, but Ganiu, if you're still here, you want to jump in?
Hello, Tijani.
Hi.
Hi. Okay, good. My name is Ganiu Bikulu from Links Nigeria. I'm the program manager. And let me go straight to what the question Joy had. In Links, we do work with in schools and out of schools. But the question I sent to you has to do with out of schools, right? So I really want to know if the out of schools who just those youth who just finished their high schools and they apply, because most of those people that apply for your program, they just finished their schools and they are intending to progress in their education. So the point now is most of them may not have the capacity because they are vulnerable. They came from the low background, and they will also need to get a kind of cushion after they finish their schools to start a small business, because not everybody can have opportunity to sit down with an investor to discuss about the product or an idea. So that is why I'm asking that question, John.
Right, so I'm trying to see if I got that question. So you're speaking about students probably who finished high school and do not have the chance to go to university but want to start a business. Did I get that right?
Yeah, that's the question. That's the question.
Okay, so right now in terms of student venture programs, because again, we try to work a lot with data. What we are trying to establish right now, we are trying to establish can we get more young people to be sponsored or to get funding for the various ventures they start. And that's why when students come into the institution, we try to be very clear around what's their pathway. Are they looking at employment, or are they looking at starting a venture or a venture for themselves? That is entrepreneurship. So we currently do not have a specific program or a specific fund set for students, let's say, who finished high school and would want to start a business. But what we do to support various organizations that have that, we've built courses that we are giving. As of last year, this year we've not had a big cohort taking because we're trying to revise it. As of last year, we built a course called Venture. So what that course was doing is that it was a free course that we were offering to any young person in the continent who wanted to start entrepreneurship. And what it does, it sort of gives them this guidance that we are giving our students internally for them to be able to understand what aspects do they need to check for before they start their business. And then this would guide them to even get to the position whereby they can be able to be ready to really request for funding, whether from angel investors or venture capitals. But as an institution right now, for students who freshly cleared school, we do not have a fund that supports that. But for any of our students who end up being admitted, whether a fee-paying student or a scholarship student, they have that opportunity to select what pathway they would want to take and then be able to go through the SPP program to be able to prepare them. But we've had a lot of our students who've received funding from people within our network who came in, saw the ideas, or rather came in for their pitches, because we normally also get students to pitch their businesses to various investors. We bring them in school. So there are students who've gotten investors for their businesses through that manner, specifically from the network. but specifically for high school students, we do not have that. But we have this course that we can be able to share with your students if it's something you're interested in.
Okay. Yeah, thank you for your time, Joy. I think we are running a little bit over. There are more questions, as you mentioned, mainly one around the seeing more about the scholarship opportunity. So maybe if you can package that in a separate email, we can just to wrap the whole session up. I don't want to take up too much of everyone's time. This was really a great session, very informative. Thanks, Joy, for that. And I'm glad there was so many questions, because it's clearly a very interesting and exciting opportunity for the young people that we're working with. So yeah, thank you to everyone for your time. The presentation will be shared. You'll be connected to the ALU team, and hopefully from this we'll be able to have some kind of formal connection where the children and young people that we're working with are able to kind of move on to this level of education as well. So really exciting, and hopefully some great things to come. Thank you so much for everyone's time, and speak to you very soon.
Thank you so much, Tijani.